Did you know that there is a longer version of the intro that I play at the beginning of every episode? There was way more that I wanted to say, but it turned out too long. So I had to cut it down to what I felt was the most important. I ended up using that longer version for the trailer of this podcast. It's the very first episode I put into the podcast world. I wanted to play that trailer for you today to celebrate the 100th episode of Overburdened No More. And I wanted to discuss with you what we've covered in those 100 episodes. I can't believe it's been over 2 years since I started working on weekly episodes to share with you. I think I've covered a lot of was my original purpose for the podcast, but I do realize that there's still a lot for us to learn, especially me. Do you feel pulled towards self-improvement but lack the daily habits and encouragement you desire to get started? Do you know what you want to do but feel other people's priorities take over? Are you reaching to become your highest self but find yourself coming up short? Welcome to Overburdened No More. I'm your host, Marla Beach, and more than anything, I want to help encourage, empower, and inspire you as you discover your priorities and highest self. Growth and change happen when you begin believing that you matter, and being your own best friend becomes a top priority. While I can't promise tear-free episodes, I do hope to have conversations that bring confidence, joy, growth, and happiness. Self-improvement is an inner game, and I'm on a mission to help women just like you and me to connect to your time, your life, and yourself. My hope is that you'll walk away from each episode not only believing in the dreams you feel pulled towards, but knowing you've had the ability within you to do them all along. With all the demands that keep coming from every direction, life can leave you feeling disconnected, weary, and overburdened. Believe me, I've been there, and visit more often than I'd like to admit. But it doesn't have to be that way. I believe we can fight back with simple daily practices that replace pressure with peace. I believe in this quote from Russell M. Nelson. He said, "The joy we feel has little to do with the circumstances of our lives and everything to do with the focus of our lives." I want to encourage all of us to develop our focus on the positive. You have distinct and special gifts and talents that you are meant to share with the people around you. I want to encourage you to learn about and develop those gifts so you can be who you are meant to be. Let's celebrate and give light to the unique gifts and talents you have as you become overburdened no more. Some of the things I wanted to cover when I started this podcast were, and I'd like for you to think back as I read over this list if you remember learning any of these things. Here's what I've pulled from re-listening to that trailer of the things I believe help us to let go of our burdens. Daily habits, motivation to get started, knowing what you want to do, but you allow others' priorities to take over your time. Reaching your highest self but coming up short. Uplift and inspire. Discovering our priorities. Believing that you matter. Becoming your own best friend. Tear-free episodes. We know that one hasn't happened. Connect to your time, your life, and yourself. Believing in the dreams that you feel pulled towards and knowing you have everything you need inside of you to achieve them. Connection. Replacing pressure with peace. Joy that comes from the focus of our lives more than the circumstances of our lives. distinct gifts and talents meant to share with those around you. Developing your gifts to become who you were meant to be. Shine the light on who you are so you can become overburdened no more. Now, I think we've covered a lot of those, but only grazed the surface of them and what there is to learn. I think there's a lot more episodes that need to be put out there so we can continue learning. I hope you know that I'm learning right alongside with you. Now, my brother, who listens to this podcast every week, shout out to my big brother Perry, he asked me how I come up with all the topics that I share. The easy answer is that it's what I'm learning. I share what I learn. I share what has helped me the most. I share what I'm still trying to learn. My goal has always been to lift and inspire others so that they can go out and lift and inspire others. That's it. I just want to help people who have felt as low as I have and help them get out of those low places faster than I did. It's a lonely, hard road. And I don't want others to feel as lonely in their journey as I have. Pretty simple, but that's the gist of it. That's what makes me want to make the next 100 episodes and hopefully beyond that. Today, I wanted to share with you little clips from the most popular episodes of the podcast, as well as my most favorite episode that I recorded. Let's start with the top 5 most listened to episodes from the first 100. Now, you need to know that the word downloaded actually means somebody listened to it. Doesn't mean you have to download it on your device to listen to it. It just means you listen to it. It's just podcast talk. Now, I didn't count the trailer, which was the #1 most downloaded episode, and I played it for you again at the beginning. It's kind of obvious that it's the most listened to because most people start at the beginning. So the number 5 most listened to episode was episode number 86, Lessons from Journaling. I was pretty vulnerable in this episode. It's not always easy to share the hard parts of life with others, especially when I have no idea who will be listening. I hope that when I do that on the podcast, get vulnerable, it helps you in some way. That's the only reason that I do this podcast. Connection only happens when we open up. So I have to be willing to open up too. Here's how I introduced that episode to you. Today I wanted to share a little bit different lesson that I learned from my journaling practice that I recently had happen. Now, I've been journaling for about 12 years, so I hope this shows you how there is always more to learn and that it's worth sticking to it. Last week, I was in a bad place, even though I didn't realize that I was until I sat down to journal first thing after I woke up like I always do. I sat down with my pen and started to write. I saw that all these negative thoughts started showing up on my page. Lots of feelings of frustration came out that weren't new. I'm used to feeling frustration about my business because there's a big gap from where I'd like to be from where I actually am. Things aren't moving forward as smoothly and as quickly as I had hoped, and that can feel really bad. I'm sure you can all relate to things you'd like to be doing better at than where you currently are. So I was letting it all come out so I could work through it like I usually do. Like I said, these weren't new thoughts. They come up quite a bit. My journaling sessions are a good time to say the things that bother me because it's completely safe to do it in my journal. And this day it just keeps coming. All this negativity and how I wish things were different and how I must be doing everything wrong and that nothing seems to work. You know how you get when you get in one of those negative places. I'm not afraid to admit that I get stuck in those negative spirals more often than others think that I do, but I also recognize that I'm not alone there either. It's a very common human experience, and that's why I'm not afraid to admit it to you. As you know, the more you get stuck there, the more evidence you find to back up those negative feelings. And that's what was happening to me that morning in my journal. During journaling times like this, what usually happens is the person who knows me best, the one I call my true self, shows up for me and starts trying to show me the positive side of things and how things aren't so bad. She shows me how I've gotten back up in the past and that things will get better. She usually tells me to keep trying. That's the side of me who starts filling my head with what to write instead of the negative side. But she didn't show up for me that morning. Even after I had written my 3 pages like I normally do, the negative stuff was still coming out. And then I stopped. I left my morning devotional in that negative state of mind. I felt horrible. I don't like to leave my journaling like that, so I was pretty down about it. So those were the feelings I took with me all through my day, low and deflated. If you haven't listened to this episode, I'd appreciate you listening all the way to the end so you can hear the actual lesson that I learned. Okay, the number 4 spot went to episode 82, Are Your Batteries Charged? This was a guest interview I did with Emily Wardrop.
It feels like when you feel stuck or overwhelmed or drowning is the description that I use all the time, because if your listeners don't have little kids now, they did at one point and they remember what it feels like to be drowning in littles, right?
Yeah.
Or a little. It doesn't take very many to feel like you're drowning. So literally drowning is the lack of oxygen, right? And so to breathe back in that breath of life, to just, because the pause that it takes to remember to breathe and to actually breathe, it calms your nervous system. There's so many beautiful things that like the brain scientists and the physiological benefits of breathing. It's so fun.
I'm glad this episode was one that you loved, because even just this one little clip I just played for you is so important for us to hear. We've got to breathe. I mean, come on. Just the benefits we can gain in our lives from stopping in a hard spot and breathing are really amazing. Thanks to Emily for being a guest on my show and reminding us of that. Let's move on to the 3rd most listened to episode. Episode number 79, the book club intro to Tranquility by Tuesday. I was kind of surprised that one of my book club episodes did this well. I was glad that it was Tranquility by Tuesday because Laura Vanderkam, who is the author of this book, is one of my favorite authors. I will admit that I don't get much feedback on my book club episodes, and I've wondered if I should continue doing the book club. But because I love reading so much and I have learned so many things from books, I just want to share them. So seeing that this was a popular episode kind of gave me some encouragement. I guess I'll keep the book club running, but please, will you email me when you read these books that I suggest so I can hear what you think about them? I'd love to discuss them with you. Here's a clip from that episode. So the book I'd like to use for our first quarter book here for the book club is another one of her books, Tranquility by Tuesday. It's her newest book, and like I said in the intro, I haven't read it. Now, I did that on purpose, not because I'm too lazy to read it. I've been hiding it from myself for about 2 months now, but I didn't read it for 2 reasons before recommending it here. Because, number 1, I trust this author. I'm a big fan and know that she is an incredible author and has such great ideas on how to use our time to live life better. And number 2, I actually think it will be fun to read a little along with you. It could become another episode or a Tip Tuesday or a post on Instagram, or lots of those actually. I think it will be fun to read it together. Now here's what I do know about this book from what I've heard in the book launch hype. Now she's come up with 9 ways to calm the chaos of life and to make time for what matters. I took that right off the front cover. Here's another thing I know about it. She tests out everything she writes about with herself first, then with focus groups, large focus groups, to see how it works. I love that. She doesn't just write a book because it worked for her. That's one of the reasons I like her writing style. I listened in on a feedback session from people who had questions about any of the 9 rules that she writes about. So I'm really excited to try them. I don't see myself doing all of them all of the time, but I would like to see what sticks after I try each one of them. Okay, we're at the second most listened to episode. It's episode 80. What's changed and what did I learn? I really liked this episode. I liked how it made me feel. I liked how I changed my focus, and that changed my feelings. None of the circumstances changed, and yet everything changed for me. Here's a clip from episode 80. Okay, here's the truth. I sat down to journal one day last week and started writing down all the stuff that I was feeling bad about not getting done from the list of goals I had made for myself for 2022. I was remembering how excited I was to try new things, make changes in my business, and in how I would spend time with my family. It really wasn't different than most years. I think I'll have time and energy to do way more than I actually do. Is that true for you too? When a whole year is out in front of you, do you envision yourself doing all sorts of things? Using every minute of every day to read those books, meet up with friends, clean all the closets, help family whenever they need you, exercise every day so you can run longer and faster and never get tired? I do. When the year is starting, I think it's actually possible to do every single goal that I set. Or I wouldn't set them. I wouldn't. I don't like setting myself up for failure. But I continue to set more goals than I'm ever able to meet. So there I was again, journaling about all the things that I hadn't done in 2022 and feeling really bad about myself. Then I had this thought. What if I started writing down all the things I did accomplish instead of what I didn't do? It's not like I sat around doing nothing for an entire year. So I did that. As I journaled, I could feel my mood change almost instantly. This one really popped out at me as something I have learned that was one of my intentions for starting the podcast. Remember the quote that I shared from Russell M. Nelson in the trailer of the podcast? The joy we feel has little to do with the circumstances of our lives and everything to do with the focus of our lives. So I guess I'm beginning to learn what I set out to share on this podcast. I'm grateful to know that at least it's beginning to happen for me. Is it beginning to happen for you too? Can you see a glimpse of the progress that you're making? Those little glimpses help us to keep going. Write a review of the episode that has helped you the most. I really want to know. That way I can make more episodes on those topics. Okay, we're at the number 1 listened to episode of the first 100, and it's episode 71, Stories That Connect Us. I was so excited that you guys loved this episode. I loved making it. It was the episode with guest Stacy Julian. She is someone that I had never met that influenced my life for good for over 25 years. I was beyond thrilled to meet her in person and then have her on as a podcast guest. She gave us some really great tips that I put under the category of connecting to our life. Here's one of those tips that she gave.
Share just a couple actual, really actionable tips with these smart devices, okay?
That'd be great.
I want you to just start, scroll back 1 month. Just take the most recent month, and I want you to scroll back, and I want you to just find 3 people pictures. And then I want you to find 2 or 3 pictures of places. And you might say something like, well, I didn't go anywhere this month. No. Your kitchen, your backyard, right? Not that you take pictures of the grocery store, but some of us do.
Some of us do.
Or
butters $4.59 a pound. What? You take a picture of that.
But so I really want you to get into this mode of thinking less like chronological, like I've got all of this backlog of years, and I want you to start looking for categories, things.
Then there's this next clip that shows her true and beautiful character and explains why I have been drawn to her for so many years.
Don't you know who you are? You are one of God's most majestic creations, and you've been put on earth for very specific reasons to experience and to learn and to grow. But more than that, I think to connect, right, to other people. And you have influence, and not just influence for the short time that you're on earth. You're meant to have influence that's broader and deeper than that. And that story is the avenue whereby you understand and remember who you are, and it's how you communicate that, the influence that you've been given, the light that you've been given. It's how you share it. That's what I think I'd want them to know. And it has nothing to do with the scrapbooks you leave kids. I just want to say that, okay?
Yes.
It has everything to do with you being your own voice and telling your story. And then what that will create in the next generation is that.
She is a beautiful person. I was so happy to share her with you. I hope she can influence you as well. If you haven't listened to that entire episode, please do. Then go listen to her podcast called Exactly Enough Time. She doesn't put out weekly episodes anymore, but she has a backlog of lots of episodes that you can go listen to right now. So, I'm sure you're dying to know which episode was my favorite. I loved a lot that you loved too, but the episode that stands out to me as my favorite, and without going back and listening to all the episodes, the one that I chose as my very favorite episode was episode 64, Law of the Harvest. It was hard for me to decide which clip to play for you, so I'm going to play the lesson that I learned from the story that I told. Please go back and listen to episode number 64 so you can hear it. Here's that clip of that lesson that I learned. To me, this law is more about who you become as you do the work, not what the outcome turns out to be. This can be true in the goals that we set, and it can work in our marriages and any relationship that is important to us as well. Now, there's that really famous song by the Beatles called Turn, Turn, Turn. In that song they sing, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven." Here are a few more of my favorite lines from that song. A time to laugh and a time to weep. A time to dance and a time to mourn. A time to build up and a time to break down. Now there's a lot of opposites in there. I choose to look at not just the positive and the negative, but all the time that we live in between. Life requires a lot of in-between time, and sometimes we get tired of waiting. I know I've caught myself asking the question in those times of waiting, why does it seem that others don't have to wait as long for what they want? Waiting for the harvest that we expected to come sooner than later, in my experience, is always worth the wait. It will require further cultivating of the soil, things like care and attention and effort, but this produces more growth. That doesn't make the waiting any easier, but it does give us more choice of what we want to focus on. Do I want it now, or do I want to become what I get to become because of the waiting? There are crops that require months, years, and sometimes a lifetime of cultivation before the harvest. Among them are rewards that you want most, and it shouldn't surprise you, really. Common sense tells us that what matters most doesn't always come easily. Thank you for going down this trip down memory lane with me. I enjoy doing this podcast for you every week. It stretches me to learn and to share things that aren't always comfortable. But like I said at the beginning, my deepest desire is to help others to get through their seasons of hard faster than I did. if I can do that for even one, and I hope that one is you, then it's been worth it. Every single episode. So, what's changing for the next 100 podcasts? I hope that I continue to get better at sharing these messages that I want to share. I hope that we can get more people to join our community. That happens when you take the time to leave a review for this podcast and write how it has helped you. That's when people read the reviews when they decide if they're going to listen to a podcast or not. When you share your uplifting moments and the things that make it worth it for your time, it makes them choose to listen also. It also helps when you tell a friend who could benefit from the topics that we share here in the podcast. If someone comes to mind, please tell him or her about it. I'd really appreciate that. If you follow me on Instagram, which I'd love it if you did, then you'll notice that I've also changed up how I share about the podcast. I've designed some new images and backgrounds that let you know when I have a new podcast out. There's new quote backgrounds and new soundbite images too. I changed them mostly because I was tired of the old ones. I hope you'll enjoy them as well. Everything else is pretty much the same. I will continue to work hard every week to come up with topics that inspire and encourage you to let your burdens go and how to find peace even when you are right in the middle of them. I hope that they will help you to love and connect with yourself so you can connect even deeper with those that you love. I hope that you will stay with me here on this journey. To end this podcast today, I'd like to encourage you to help me get the word out about this podcast. You can do that in 3 different ways. Number 1, leave a review for the podcast. Number 2, rate the podcast. And number 3, tell a friend. I'm going to give you a stronger nudge to leave a review on the podcast. It really is easy to do. Now, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, I'm going to show you how you do this. If you're listening on your phone, I'm going to walk you through how to do it. Okay, so if you're already listening to my podcast, you'll see the episodes that look like this. You'll see the icon that represents my podcast. Keep scrolling down. You're going to scroll down just a few episodes. It lists a few that tell you what's been up lately. And then you'll get to where it says ratings and reviews. You're going to see 5 hollow stars. Tap the number of stars that you'd like to give me. 5 would be awesome. See? You just have to click stars. Now, keep scrolling down. You're going to see where it says write a review. It's in purple letters. You just tap on that, and it takes you to a screen where you can type in anything you want about the podcast. You can make it short and sweet, or you can make it as long as you'd like. I'd appreciate anything you have to say. This helps more people find the podcast, and it tells Apple to show it to more people. And that's what we want. We want them to have the option to listen if they want. Now, to thank those who leave me a review before the end of June 2023, I'm having a giveaway. Anyone who leaves a review before June 30th, 2023 will be entered into a drawing to win a very exclusive mug. I only had 2 made. I gave one to a friend that is my biggest supporter. Shout out to Kirsten. And I have 1 more. Only 1 more. So that leaves that I won't have one. I will send it to 1 lucky listener who leaves me a review before June 30th, 2023. I want to leave it open for at least a month because not everyone listens the first day that it comes out. And I want to encourage more people to leave reviews. So thanks in advance to each of you who takes just a few minutes to do that for me. And for all of those who will join us because you left a review. I'm going to post a picture of that mug on Instagram and on my Facebook page so you can see it. So join me in both of those places so you can see it. Now you can find me at Hunky Dory everywhere. Now I'm also going to show it on my Tip Tuesday episode that comes on May 30th on Instagram and Facebook, which means it was before this episode came out. You can go back and find that. Just scroll back through once you've joined me, once you started following me on Instagram and my Facebook page, and you'll see it there. Now here's the way I end every podcast, and that's not changing. And rarely can I get through it without crying because I feel it so deeply. Thank you for joining me here today. And remember, I see you. I understand how hard you're trying, and I'd like to help however I can. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you back here next week for the next 100 episodes.